So I give the floor to Anne Taupin, in English if you can, or in Chinese, that would be a problem for me. Okay.
Let's go to China. First of all, I'm very happy to meet with a lot of Chinese friends here, which I know for most of you, so thank you for being here. Before we begin, just to let you know, the last 5 years I spent in China, I was working for Invest in France agency, and I daily met with Chinese CEO of big to speak to you today. Okay, so let's see some recent trends about outbound Chinese investment. Companies outside are very new. It began in the 2000s with the Zhou, which you all know. Today it is quite a big number. We do have $75 billion of investment abroad from Chinese companies. It tripled during the last 5 years. It's a very significant number. And the direct Chinese investment to Europe are growing up very, very quickly. In 2011, it was about more than $10 billion, very, very big numbers. The M&A operations are growing up significantly. In 2011, Europe was representing 74% of all worldwide M&A operations of Chinese companies. And from 2001 to 2011, China ranked among the 12 countries investing in France. And we do, in Europe, France is the third country receiving investment from Chinese companies. But it is going to be the first one very, very quickly, isn't it? Okay, so, next slide. Well, okay, I put some chart which is interesting for you to see with the development and growth of Chinese outbound M&A in Europe. You can see from 2009, it grown from 50% to 38% in 2012. So a very significant growth. Okay, so what is the Chinese context of company going global? It's very recent, I said before, but Chinese companies are very used to meet with foreign investors because foreign companies in China used to come very early in the 90s. So in China, and some of them went to China already, you are used to be very well received by Chinese investors. They are used to receive us, to speak with us, and to, take care of us when we go to China. The thing is, when Chinese companies come to France, it's not the same story because it's not very easy. Of course, it's a country with a lot of cultural points, very important. So I would say language, culture are the main issue our Chinese investor met in France. But, however, this is significant with Chinese company. They learn very quick, and especially they learn from their mistakes, which we in France do not do all the time. So it's very good to learn that. And the most important intercultural issues come from M&A operations because up to date we do have more than 150 Chinese companies in France. And M&A operations are very important in these 150 companies. Most of the times they do acquire companies with 100 to 200 employees in France. So they have to deal with the daily operation of managing a French team and French employees, which may not be very, very easy. Okay, so I used to meet with this Chinese CEO, and what I'm telling you today, what they told me every day. Okay, so French business environment, especially, of course, taxes, labor law, it's a lack of international management for the management team, for sure, and some grasp of French way of life and cultural habits, which I'm going to develop later on. And the main point of concern for our investors, and I'm sure all the Chinese friends which are here today will agree with me, is how to deal with unions, labor law problems, the French holidays, working hours, It's very important. And Marion, I totally agree with what you said. You have to learn French, whether you like it or not. It's very useful. The country you invest in, it's not going to be very useful. And why do I tell you that? Because I used to meet a very impressive CEO when I was in China. And the most impressive one were two CEOs who didn't speak English or French either. But they are very successful until now in France. Why? Because they were very open-minded people. They were real businessmen with a lot of, business habits. And they told me very interesting stories that I am going to share with you right now. So let's speak about unions. Unions is always a problem for our Chinese investor. How will they deal with union? Even when I meet with a small rep office investor, they ask me about this unions problem, which is not going to happen for a rep office, obviously. And I remember Mr. Su. Mr. Su is the CEO of a big Chinese company in the Shandong province, very successful in France. They acquire a company in France. And I told him, I said, Mr. Su, what about your experience with unions? He said, oh, that's not a problem. I love unions. I said, oh my God, you love unions. And can you tell me more? So how did he connect with the unions? Very simple. He sat on a table in France with them. He's not speaking French or English. He had an interpreter. And they had a bottle of wine. All together, they drink wine first. After the first glass of wine, they went to speak. Okay, said Mr. Su, tell me, what is your problem? So the delegate of the unions was speaking with them. Well, we do have blah, blah, blah. We don't want to work on the weekends, blah, blah, blah. And Mr. Su was listening. And then he said, I understand you. Wow, great. Unions are being understood. This is a very good point, right? So the union said, oh my God, he's Chinese, but he can understand us. It's absolutely wonderful. And all the problems were settled only by sitting together and listening. Okay, it sounds obvious, but it is very important to understand that if you take time, you are not from the same country, you are not from the same culture, you take time to sit down and to listen to people, indeed, you can make a lot of progress, right? So this is a very small example. Another example also is from, I can tell the name of the company because it used to be in a lot of report and TV shows. The name is Heathrow, and everybody, Chinese people here, know Heathrow company, which invested in a company, French company in Saint-Dizier. And the employees of a French company were all very surprised that every morning the Chinese CEO, which is based in France, of the company, make a round in the factory and say hello to each employee. Okay, in France, there must be CEOs doing the same. But for the French employee, it was very significant and surprising that a Chinese person could come and say hello to the employees of the company. It's also a small detail, but it's very significant and very important as an understanding of, I respect you, you're my employee, yes, but, I say hello to you. And this CEO is not speaking French either. He does speak very good English indeed, but not French. And speaking about, let's say, failure of investment, well, up to date, the biggest example of a Chinese investment not doing well, you all know of this, it's in the paper, so we can also say the name. The name is TCL acquisition of Thomson. It was in the very early period of Chinese investment to France. It happened in 2003, where the Chinese TCL went to purchase Thomson TV business unit. And it's a big failure. Why? For two main reasons. There was no due diligence made by the Chinese company before investing. So the TV business unit was not going well. The figures, accountings were not very good. But they invest very quick because for them, they react in their habits of reacting, well, we don't need due diligence. We don't need to know about the company. We're going to invest a lot of money and see how it goes. So it was a big failure because it didn't take time to realize that they were investing maybe in another group, which was now in a good business shape. And the second problem of TCL is that they had managers who were not at all experienced in international management. But I would say people who didn't make the effort to know about French people. And there's kind of a let's say, funny experience of it. They went to set up meetings during the weekends in France. So tell me if you can have meetings with French people during the weekend. I would be very eager to know. And they were very surprised also about the fact that French people shut down their mobile phone during the weekend. And that's so it's very specific about French people ways of, but it has to do with habits. Favorite CEO, which is Mr. Yan. Mr. Yan is absolutely fantastic. He comes from Xinjiang province. He doesn't speak English or French either. And Mr. Yan told me, you know, Miss Anna, I love France so much, but come on, why do you need to take so many holidays? Why do workers do not work on weekends? Why do you take so many times to have lunch every day? 2 hours every day. And that's true, that is kind of, you know, way of life and different habits. So it's also something that to be noticed. Okay, so some issues, but also some very good point, because as I told you, it's all going in the best direction. In order to increase the mutual understanding because Chinese companies and French companies, I give you some example, and I'm going to follow up on this. Big company, and especially the biggest one, very specific way of enhancing the cultural exchange between France and China. What they do is that they have a regular exchange by French technicians going to China. And this is what another company in the northern China is doing also. When you go there, you see about 50 to 60 French technicians working in the Chinese company. They stay here for more than a year. You know, they have houses and food and anything they need in order to work in the Chinese factory, Chinese head office, but also in order to understand. They don't speak English, they are technician, French technician. They do have translator over there. But it's very amazing when you go to this Chinese company in Shenyang, which is, you know, minus 20 degrees in the winter, and you see about 50 to 60 French people working there. It's totally impressive. They had about 80 people, the biggest one day. So it's a way of exchange. So it's from French technicians going to Chinese company. The other experience, which is very helpful, we do have more and more in China Chinese graduates, which are very high level and very impressed by their language skill, and they are all PhD and MBA. And these young, let's say, graduates also are very useful for Chinese company investing abroad because they do have the background of international culture, management, and so ever. Another company, also a chemical company who has invested in France very successfully, is doing something very interesting. It's not only the technicians that they put together with the Chinese partner. They organize holiday camps in France or in China with the families of the CEOs of the company and the manager. And it works indeed very well. And another thing also which is going in the trend in China, you see more and more of it in big groups, in business units of the head office in China, manager. So there's this big group in Beijing where in each business unit you find an Australian CEO, an American CEO, a German CEO. Up to date there is no French CEO, but it's going to come obviously. And it's also a way to exchange. The due diligence practice also are very important in developing, and well, no need to say, but if you want to communicate, you'd better listen, be patient, and be perseverant. Okay, so just a quick look on this chart, which is indeed very interesting. I cannot see the source, I'm sorry, but it's come from the economical magazine. Anyway, let's have a look at the China part, because this is the effect of cultural factors or differences in a company international expansion, and we can say that China is not alone. Look at the number. It creates difficulties at 67% for Chinese investors, but you can see the same for everybody. So meaning that it's still the key and a very important element to take care of when you invest. Next chart, also very interesting. It's a survey about Chinese CEOs in the biggest difficulties and challenges they met when they invest abroad. So we can see at 82%, this is the lack of management experience. Of course, and it's recognized by CEOs themselves. And of course, the understanding of local regulations, which is always very, very difficult at 73%. And 63%, of course, the difference in culture, which we all know about. Okay, so as a quick conclusion, we all know in this context of globalization, whether it's for French companies going to China or Chinese companies coming to France, the issues are all the same. It's very important to understand these intercultural insights and management issues. I would say in China, when you go to China, there are also some cities or regions which are not, in the same practice toward foreign investment, and this will take some time, but progress are very quick indeed. And very quickly. So new measures, new approaches, we see more and more success, and obviously we do hope that there will be more and more Chinese companies investing in France. Thank you very much.
Jing, you have a few minutes left, thanks to Anne, and please, we listen to you.
Thank you, everybody. And as you know, I think everybody here knows Paris Development Agency, so I'll just quickly go through the first slide. And so I've been working in Paris Development Agency for almost 4 years, and I think you all know all the services that we provide to the foreign companies, especially in my case to the Chinese companies. And I think during these 4 years, I've been experiencing some cultural shock and cultural elements in all the services that we provide to the Chinese companies. And I'd like to explain to you some cultural elements in these aspects. Next slide, please. First of all, as you know, we provide a full service package to the Chinese companies, and I'd like to start with very simple things. If you want to organize a meeting with your business partner in Paris, it seems very little and very simple. But for the French people, you are expected to have a response or an answer in 24 hours or mainly in a week. Or on the contrary, for the Chinese companies, they usually expect an answer immediately or in 1 day. This is a kind of a cultural difference because not because French people are lazy, it's not that. It's actually, in France, it's not like, in China, usually one people is doing one thing, but people in France is people doing a million things at the same time. This is a different organization structure, and so in a way, you can say that people in France tell you that he or she is available in a week, which means he has a lot of things to do before that day. And this is very important to keep in mind because Chinese investors used to call me and say to me, did I do something wrong or I'm being ignored? This is totally not the case. Your business partner is just currently busy and he's very happy to meet you, but just in a week. And another point is that considering the cancellation of the meeting, of course, with the French partners, you can have a meeting, and when you have a date, you can really count on it. Sometimes you get canceled at the last moment, but it's relatively rare. For the, I think. So one thing to keep in mind is that you might have to get prepared to be cancelled if you have already a meeting with a Chinese company. Again, it doesn't mean that Chinese companies are less reliable. It's, in my way of understanding, is that Chinese companies are more like opportunity goers. So if if you prefer, this is a kind of in his or her business schedule, he has to juggle the different meetings, and sometimes he or she has to cancel. But of course, if you get canceled 3 times, you can take that as a hint. And of course, the second issue is, as you know, we have foreign companies find their offices in Paris, and this is a major issue for foreign companies because everybody has to start with an office. And I like to say that the best way for you to find your office in Paris is to tell, especially for the Chinese investors, is to tell the real estate agency exactly what you want and what you can afford, because for my experience, if you ask the questions something like, do you have a budget, or what is your budget, and in which area, you can really get a very not very clear answer. This is really bad for the real estate agency, but also bad for the Chinese investors themselves, because second point is that in the long run, the real estate agency cannot really offer you something that fits your needs if you don't really explain your needs to him or to her. Another point is, of course, if you point is there are something that you cannot do. Well, you can totally do it in China. So these basic points are very important because they can create some delays in your project in France. Especially, we've been helping 2 of the major Chinese companies here, present here, ICBC and China Eastern Alliance. For example, you cannot put your logo on the front of the building, but you can totally do it in China. And what I get from the Chinese investors is, first of all, they don't understand why, and because in their mind, when they rent an apartment, an office, they can do it whatever you want. However, in the city of Paris, a very important thing is to keep the style of the city, especially in terms of the Osmania style buildings, which doesn't mean you cannot do something to advertise your company. In that case, we find an ideal solution for China Eastern Airlines. To actually, they put on some scrolls on the windows, and in the end, they have their logos on the front of the building, which is totally with the scope of the law, but also the total style of the city. The next point is recruiting your French team in Paris. I used to follow up one of the Chinese companies in Paris, and I have to say that sometimes I really want to use this idiom in Chinese, which is too much means not enough, 过犹不及, as every Chinese can understand here, which means you don't have to really pay 400 euros for an assistant. Of course, I would like to be that assistant, but 400 euros is not. It's really not necessary because this is a crucial problem. Because otherwise, the Chinese investors, they would say, I have a huge salary package, and afterwards I have taxes to pay. And as you know, if you pay 400 euros as an company, you pay more than that for this employee. So, if eventually this is not a key position, especially for the foreign investors. Another point is that, of course, the city of Paris encourages everybody to employ French, and it's a good point, but it's also a very logical point. It's like in China, when the foreign companies went to China, they found Chinese talents to manage the Chinese, and it's the same thing in France. You will have to let the French manage the French, especially just like Anna said just a moment ago. It's not enough just to speak the language, but also to know the culture. The next point is working with experts in Paris. Especially, I think my lawyer friends will be happy today because a good lawyer and a good consultant is absolutely not a waste of money, especially in the question in terms of the visa and titre de séjour. Because if you make a mistake, there's no going back. You will waste 3 or 6 months or a year of your time, and in the meanwhile, you cannot start your business in France. Well, in order to avoid such kind of waste of money and more likely waste of time, you have to prepare in advance. People usually come to me and to talk about the visa and titre de séjour problems. I admit it's really a complete issue and it's not simple. That's all the more reasons why you have to you will get your visa or your work permit in time. Another point is in terms of seeking your business opportunity in Paris. Your business opportunities are your final goal of coming to Paris. In French and to really make it in the mainstream circle of the French society. That's the way of you doing business in France, like in China, really. Which means you have to know somebody that knows somebody, etc. Another point is that I used to, people approach me, investors approach me all the time from China with such a brilliant idea and with such maybe doing business in China, sometimes you have an excellent idea. You also have to have a very detailed business plan. So the PowerPoint introduction and the figures are very important. They do matter. The last point for the cultural advices for Chinese companies in Paris is that, first of all, your service, your lawyers, etc. Again, another example for the real estate problems. If you always say it's okay, it's really beautiful, and you do not say no, and he or her will not be hurt. He will just understand your need quickly. And there are a million propositions, offers in the real estate market in Paris, and I'm sure he or she can find something for you. Other point is be straightforward. There's a song actually which is a little bit funny to describe Tokyo girls, their way of doing things, but I think it's the same for the Chinese girls or Chinese men, which means when they say yes, it means no, and they say no, it means maybe. But so when you're doing business in France, try to avoid that. I think all my French friends, all my colleagues appreciate the Chinese delicacy and the Asian style, etc. But when you're doing business, there are already cultural differences. When you're speaking in English, they can only understand you 50% or 80% at the most. And if you are not being straightforward, he will understand you less, which why I think being straightforward is a very good point. That's mainly the message. Thank you.
Bravo. Merci, Jingjing.